Welcome to Grappling with the Gray, a forum for promoting an ethical mindset and ethical decision-making. Help us more clearly see both sides of complex issues and better navigate the moral challenges of everyday life. I'm Rabbi Yonason Goldson, and I'd like to welcome my guest today. With me is John McGlothlin, who's a captain in the Army Judge Advocates General Corps and DC Army Reserve, as well as an adjunct professor of business and ethics at the University of Maryland Global Campus. Mark O'Brien is founder and principal of O'Brien Communications Group, a B2B brand management and marketing communications firm, and host of The Anxious Voyage, a syndicated radio show about life's trials and triumphs. And Annette Taylor is a researcher of evolutionary psychology and biology. Her website, Cave Dweller Club, offers guidance and insights on how we can better understand the way our own hardwiring influences unconscious bias and decision-making. Thank you all for being with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And here is our topic for today. In 2005, a British reality TV program chose 4 finalists from a group of 25 applicants to become the world's first space tourists. They were flown to a training site in Russia, underwent rigorous training, and were about to embark on a 5-day journey into orbit. At least that's what they thought. In fact, the Russian training camp was a decommissioned military base near Suffolk, England. The entire project was a charade, and one of the 4 participants, as well as the pilots and the training crew, were actors and part of the conspiracy. After 5 days in space, where they were provided with ludicrous explanations for the lack of zero gravity, performed nonsensical experiments, and gazed at the Earth through the observation window, again they thought, the adventure culminated with a spacewalk. Instead of stepping out into the void, they stepped out into a film studio in front of a live audience. Clearly, the passengers were embarrassed at being the butt of an elaborate practical joke. It may have eased their humiliation that they were paid 25,000 British pounds for their participation, but does that excuse this kind of deception? Is it different from many psychology experiments which depend on deception to gain insights into human psychology? Much of reality TV celebrates deception, betrayal, bullying, and winning at any cost. What is the effect on us as individuals and members of the society? Are these kinds of entertainment contributing to us becoming more cynical, self-absorbed, and disconnected from one another? If so, what's their attraction? And what can we do about their impact on our culture? The floor is open.
I'll jump in briefly. So I was surprised to hear about this. I don't know about the rest of the group, but I was not aware this had happened. I was not surprised, however, to find out it was British. Just and I say that without judgment. I worked in the UK for a few months, had a great experience, but there is but humor varies by different countries, different cultures. And I was shocked often at the coarseness and the roughness, the meanness sometimes of the humor there. Not just the humor, but like the way the tabloids cover different personalities and that sort of thing. So it was interesting to hear about it as sort of you see experiences like this day to day, but usually they don't get captured in such a novel and ridiculous way as this TV show. So I just want to start off like, it was a surprise to me that this had happened, but once I thought about it a bit more, it really does fit into some possibly worrying trends, or at least worrying parts of human nature that have always been with us.
Now, wasn't there a British show called, what's it called, The Weakest Link? This dripping sarcasm from the host, a far cry from Alex Trebek.
Yeah, really, game shows are an interesting corollary to that, because there was sort of a more older patrician, help me out, Price is Right, Bob Barker, where they're just sort of like this genial master of ceremonies, and where they weren't having fun at the expense of the contestants, versus the Weakest Link style of entertainment instead.
What you were saying about the British, John, and I'll join you. I'm not casting aspersions. Is the Prime Minister's questions on C-SPAN? Have you ever watched that? I love that. They absolutely savage each other and manage to do it with an air of gentility. I just love that. Beyond that, I I couldn't help thinking, and I was aware of this, and I'm going to share something with you a little later. A, at how superficial I think we've become in the 19 years since this happened. Um, so-called reality TV has evolved so far from that, and people watch it and are entertained by it. And it also, bearing in mind that when my sons were small, one of our Saturday morning rituals was to watch professional wrestling. It's sort of like that. I mean, as long as you're completely willing to suspend your disbelief, it's just entertainment. And, I think that experiment from 19 years ago is relatively innocuous by today's standards. I hesitate to use the word standards.
Right. Yeah, I'm super, super on the fence with this situation because I feel like we should be able to tease each other. If we trust each other, then there's space for teasing. And I'm really glad at the very end of this, they sent the people who tried out to be on the Space Cadets. They actually sent them to they sent them to a weightlessness camp or something. So they did actually kind of get to do what they were promised, not really promised, but I thought that was a nice touch. I think if they had just used these people for their show and just kind of said, here's your money, see ya, I would have been like, God, this feels a little wrong. But yeah, I actually don't have a strong opinion. I'd like to hear more what you guys have to say, because again, I think we should be able to tease each other, but at some level, these people spend a lot of personal energy being trained and doing all these things, and they were doing it for humanity. I mean, they had this like goal, and then it was like pulled out from under them, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know. I don't know.
I didn't think about it until really just this very moment, that the old Candid Camera TV show.
Yeah, same.
It was all this type of thing, but I think that there's a very clear distinction, which you just sort of framed for us, in that those were little vignette type things. The guy whose coffee mug is glued to the tabletop, that type of thing. It's like, I can't figure out what's going on here. Or here, there's this massive investment of time, of energy, of intent to actually be having an experience. And, I think one of the elements here is that these people wanted so much for this to be true that they overlooked the obvious. If you watch the documentary about it, they let the cat out of the bag numerous times, and they got more and more absurd with what the stories they were telling them and the things they made them do, and yet none of them really was willing to give up on the illusion. It was just too attractive.
Annette, did you find the article in the Guardian that I did?
I don't think so. What's it about?
Oh, it's about this program.
Oh,
and
was it written in 2005? No?
Well, all I know is at the top it says this article is more than 3 years old.
Oh, then yeah, probably.
and there isn't a date on it, so I don't know. But I would imagine it was probably written pretty close to the show. But I'm asking because some of the information that you just shared was in there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and some of the people who participated after the fact said, "Wow, there were all these opportunities when I really should have known what was going on."
Yeah, the documentary kind of says they almost guessed it, but then the actor who was included in their group would kind of convince them otherwise.
And I don't know if this was in the documentary, but there was something actually quite beautiful. And it made me think about our capacity for wonder and how insistent and resilient it is. There's in the article, it says, for the space cadets, although the entire world around them was manufactured, the genuine emotion it elicited was not. They believed they were looking at the Earth. So in some sense, they really were. And even when everything was later revealed, they would still retain those feelings of awestruck wonder. One of the contestants, I suppose, was a guy named Skelton, and he said it was genuinely moving, and I was definitely immersed. A tiny bit of my brain was saying, this isn't real, but most of it was going, wow, look, there's Canada.
Mm.
It's amazing that that sense of wonder would have overcome whatever his suspicions might have been.
Well, they also said that even the actor who was there, even he got sort of swept up in the moment, looking out at what's supposed to be the view of Earth that he knows is just a video. He couldn't help
Wow.
sharing the emotion of the others. John?
He's a talented actor. I don't know. So my first thought about this was, I'm sure we've all heard the phrase punching down, right?
Mhm.
And it's a key way in which, at least often, humor is evaluated. And to give a personal spin to that, back in high school and before, I was incredibly nerdy. Not to say I'm not now, but joining the Army does tend to nurture other parts of your personality besides playing video games. And I was actually a video game journalist. That's the type of person I was in high school. So I could make certain jokes with that social status, and I had pretty wide leeway. I could make fun of the other nerdy kids, and it was just nerd on nerd violence, and nobody was really bothered by it, right? Or I could make fun of the jocks. Obviously, that people thought that was hilarious, right? That was a nerd was sticking up for himself. But as I started to change and kind of flesh out other parts of my personality, I couldn't make the same jokes anymore, at least and get the same sort of reaction. And because what they were seen in a different context. So I thought about that with this TV show and the inherent nature of an organized TV network punching down on people. A lot of it is dependent on tone. And sometimes these shows do portray people with empathy, even if part of the show is based off of, look at these idiots. Can you believe they believe this? How hilarious is that? So you hope that there's at least some pathos mixed in there, and that the entertainment isn't exclusively based off of this sort of voyeuristic laughing at the people involved. And it's at least balanced with what Mark cited, that sort of sense of wonder that people had, because you really do need some of that. Otherwise, this does run the risk of being too heavy on the side of punching down.
And I think it helped that it was at least not a big group of them, but there were 3 of them. If there had been a single person being tricked this way, in my mind, because I'm all about group dynamics,
Yeah.
that would have been meaner in my mind. Like that was like that was singling out somebody. But if you're in a group of people that are kind of getting tricked, I don't know, at least you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did that.
And there's
And then I
something about
wonder,
humor. So much of humor is at someone else's expense. And there's an article I read in a magazine that folded long ago called Civilization. And I've always remembered this article. It compared Johnny Carson with David Letterman. And I hope that members in the audience are old enough to at least know what those names mean. But they said that Carson was ironic. He was poking fun at the world. He was poking fun at everybody, sort of like we're all laughing at ourselves. And Letterman was always dripping sarcasm. There's always some butt to the joke. And the difference between sarcasm and irony, I think, is critical, because sarcasm is all about tearing down. It actually comes from a Latin root meaning to rip or tear or bite.
Mm.
And there has to be some object that's being attacked with the humor, as opposed to irony, which is more inclusive. What was really kind of funny, I mentioned this in a previous episode, and someone said, well, actually, Letterman's supposed to be a pretty nice person, and Carson wasn't didn't have a reputation for being such a nice person.
Like in his
Interesting
regular
spin on
life.
it.
Yeah, interesting.
You know, I'm just remembering two contrasting things that took place on Letterman. There was a British actor, um, very self-abusive, alcoholic, died relatively young. I can't remember his name. And Letterman was doing his shtick on him, and the guy got really, really angry, to the point where I'm not sure anybody was really sure what was going to happen. And conversely, um, one night Letterman had Johnny Winter on, and Johnny Winter, you might guess from those guitars, was one of my childhood idols. Um, I mean, he's an albino, legally blind, and Letterman was being his same sarcastic self, and Johnny just rolled with it and was laughing. Maybe he was accustomed to it. I don't know. I wish I could remember the name of that actor. You'd know it if I remember. I'll try to remember.
We have a couple of
But yeah.
comments. Martin says, nothing like old school British humor. First and foremost, they make fun of themselves, the absurdities of their own culture and society, and of course, the French. And Jackie says, what are your thoughts on people who are easily hypnotized at those shows? We had a hypnotist come to our high school, but not everybody went under. Are these people more vulnerable, like the space cadets, that just wanted to believe it? That's really interesting, because I also had hypnotists come to my junior high school, and there's a whole group of students and teachers, and only one person of the entire, there must have been 20 people up there on the stage, and only one person did not go under.
Really? Did you happen to be one of them?
I was not.
I have no idea if this is right or wrong, but I'm positively convinced I could not be hypnotized. Of course, because I believe that, I would probably be the first one to go under.
I still remember this. I mean, this was 50 years ago. And I could still visualize it. It was so extraordinary what he got these people to do. It was except in
I don't know,
one
it
case.
makes me think of my college freshman dorm where there was one guy, we knew he had not drunk very much, but he was acting like he was the most drunk person I'd ever seen. So I think that the eagerness to embrace the experience probably does play a role, Mark. So I don't know if you'd be completely immune. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not against being hypnotized. I've been in an event like that, but I wasn't one of the subjects. So I haven't had the chance myself, but it does speak to the importance of people being like willing participants and embracing it, and how much that can affect their role in the experience versus just being an onlooker.
Yeah, I wonder if that's in any way related to the willful suspension of disbelief. I don't know if you've seen the Guillermo del Toro, is that his name?
Okay.
Film The Shape of Water.
I've not. I know the main plot point though, or the main.
It's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, and we happened to see it with one of my wife's cousins, and her first remark after the movie was, "Oh, how could anybody believe that?" And I was thinking, wow, I can't believe what you just missed.
Wow.
And I will admit this. I know we're being recorded and everything, but my big fear is that if I were to be hypnotized, it would be in public, and the hypnotist would make me act like a duck. Yeah, I'm absolutely terrified at that thought.
I think we'll just let that one hang there.
Wasn't that a classic hypnotist? I haven't seen that type of routine in a while, but isn't that a classic thing they ask people to do, or am I just associating that?
I don't know.
Well, this
Hopefully you never
do
find
it.
out.
This hypnotist I saw in junior high school, everybody did exactly what they were told. I mean, even, he got this one girl to go rigid as a board, and he stood on her chest. I mean, it was unbelievable. But he told one guy to lie down on the ground, and so when you get up, your hand is going to stick to the floor, and as hard as you pull, you're not going to be able to get your hand off. And the guy stood up and just walked right back to his chair.
Wow.
He was hypnotized. But he said, some things you just can't get people to do.
That makes me think of fire walking. which actually is the first item on my list of things I'm never going to attend.
You're not going to Tony Robbins?
Yeah, but yeah, right, exactly. So going back to the TV thing and the so-called reality TV, um, what kind of element do we think it adds? Cynicism springs to mind.
Oh, the
You mean
reality,
as a result
reality
of-
TV ads specifically.
Well, no, that advertising ads, because by and large, these so-called reality TV shows are being made to make money for somebody else.
Oh, absolutely. And they're cheap to produce. That was one of the main reasons for their rise, besides the, things go in trends anyway. But the shows were so cheap to make that, and, once I think Survivor was the show that first made it a thing.
Oh
And
man,
that wasn't really
thing's like-
based off laughing at anyone in the way that some of the other reality TV shows were. But at the same time, I think the cheapness of them was a huge part of the appeal.
Mhm.
I
Big
wonder if
time.
I wonder if the husbands in the Real Housewives series think it's cheap.
Probably not.
Probably not.
I love the term reality TV because these
Yeah.
situations are so not only not real, but they're not natural. So if you're looking to reality TV to learn something about human nature, you are looking in the wrong place, because these are highly manufactured situations, and they oftentimes have like a secret camera where they can like tell what they're really thinking. And these are situations that don't exist between people in normal life. Like it's just the craziest title for this like genre.
Yeah, and it's using it like you can use exaggeration as a tool for humor, right? Because the TV show we talked about, the space, you're all going to space type of thing. But these shows don't always use exaggeration for the point of humor. They use it for just spectacle. Like there's not even like giving the kindest reading to the British TV show that was the jump off point for the conversation. Like that can be that there can be some interesting points made there. It doesn't have to be the point of the show to get people to think about the sense of awe or disbelief, that sort of thing. But you can at least work that in there. I don't think some of these reality TV shows are even trying to be funny. It's more just it's the emotional equivalent of someone falling down the stairs over and over again. And there's not even we can at least defend humor. Like we said, whether it's punching up at the powerful or something insightful like the Johnny Carson, the wry observational humor. There's none of that with some of these reality shows.
Yeah, it's
So
mocking. It's
at least
just
humor has the potential of a point.
Yeah, we're laughing at people. We're mocking them. Can you imagine anybody this reads? I still remember this too. That I got in I was getting onto a plane, and I got to my seat, and there was a copy of the New York Times Magazine. I thought, oh, good, something to read before cell phones. And and on the cover it says Big Brother. So I got doubly interested because I'm a huge devotee of George Orwell. Well, as soon as I start reading the article about this new reality show that's coming, where they're going to have cameras all over the house, and I literally started shaking. I thought, this is.
Isn't that another product of England? Isn't that where that first came
They
from?
may have
I
started
don't
there. I
think
don't know.
so.
No,
We've imported some of these shows and just given them
Yeah.
accents or hosts without accents.
The
But it's your
baking
point,
show.
John, that they're there to make money.
Yeah.
People are going to watch these things. If they watch them in England, maybe they'll watch them here. But it's just the level of spectacle, the lack of dignity, of self-respect, people willingly putting themselves in humiliating situations so they can be seen.
Yeah. I just checked,
Yeah.
by the way, to give the Brits their fair shake. It was the Dutch who came up with Big Brother. So my apologies for making some assumptions that weren't true there.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and imagine that the American version is worse. We don't watch network TV. Actually, we don't watch network TV at all. But if we happen to be, I think Big Brother's on CBS. If we happen to be watching local news and a promo for Big Brother comes on, I mean, we just look at each other like, whew, Western civilization is very, very close to the edge. which reminds me, and I hesitate to even ask, have you ever watched 90 Day Fiance?
Yes. See, I think I'll defend that humor a little bit. I think there's that offers more of a commentary on some possibly more interesting themes than some of the purely voyeuristic hidden camera. Who's gonna win? There's a competitive aspect to some of these shows, which really brings out some of, I think, the worst aspects. That, there's no humor, there's no commentary, there's no pathos, there's no nothing except like, I want the prize and I gotta beat you to get it. For 90 Day Fiance, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No, you're not interrupting.
I'll go to bat for 90 Day Fiance.
And just out of curiosity, on what grounds? What I will say for that show is that on the very few occasions I've watched it, I felt much better about myself, because I'm able to think, you know what, I'm a complete mess, but I'm not that messed up.
So briefly, here's why I defend 90 Day Fiance.
Yeah.
It's easy to look back and say things are getting worse in any particular part of society. And sometimes, any generation wants to turn to the next generation, be like, I can't believe you're bad at this, right? But one thing that I think is provably getting worse is loneliness. And I think there's enough research into that show. It's not just one generation judging another. It's not just lack of context. And I think 90 Day Fiance really provides insight into the situations of people who, for whatever reason, fair, unfair, their own personal failings or just bad luck, aren't able to have a successful relationship. So they reach out to someone in another country whose main interest is seemingly most of the time just coming to America. And is this person worth tolerating in the name of living in this country? Not do I love this person, but do I not dislike them so much that I'm willing to give up a chance to come to America? So because of that context, I get more out of that show. And I'm not saying every couple they show offers any kind of window into the soul of modern life, but I think that the show in general, at least enough of the time, touches on some of those themes about how much people struggle in this important area.
That could
I
really
can only
take
agree.
us. Yeah, that could take us in a whole different direction. The unreasonable expectations we have, which is why people are not having successful relationships so frequently. But Mark, you said something that I'd kind of like to steer it back. We talk about the popularity of these types of shows. Is it that I can look at people and I can feel better about myself
Oh.
because I'm not them?
I was being facetious, of course, and honestly, I find myself completely agreeing with what John just said. There is something actually heartbreaking about the loneliness that informs the expectations that those people have, meaning the folks from the United States who go over intending to bring somebody back with them. I'll never remember the name of these folks, but one season years ago, there was a very successful guy from the US. I think he was a software developer or something. And he was, chasing is the wrong verb, but enamored of a young Ukrainian woman for years, and admitted how many hundreds of thousands of dollars he had spent in that pursuit, and he would not give it up. I mean, that's heartbreaking. It's demoralizing.
Super sad.
Yeah, so I'm with you there, John.
We've definitely gotten away from humor. I apologize. But
No.
Well, it's. I really think that you're onto something with that. There's this sort of voyeurism, looking at what a mess other people are. I mean, you're coming in two different directions. Right? Why do people participate in it?
Yeah.
Because they're desperate for attention and they don't care what kind of attention they're going to get. And the reality that they are going to get attention. Why are we so fascinated with this kind of behavior, with these types of scenarios?
I think it does make us feel a little bit more centered. I mean, it is a spectacle. And I find myself watching recently, I don't know if you guys ever get sucked down these TikTok rabbit holes, but there's a series of people pretending to be bushes in pots. And as people
You mean
walk
like
by, like decorative,
shrubbery?
yes, shrubbery. They pretend to be shrubbery. And as people walk by, either the jump start scare them, or they drop their flower and then the people stop to pick up the flower and then they scare them. And most of the time I'm crying laughing because the people who have been startled are laughing. This is a total like jump scare, hopefully harmless, but there are the ones where a couple people have punched the guy in the face right after he jump scares them. So there's like all these different reactions, but when the people are laughing at themselves in the situation, they go back and they give the guy a high five. Then I'm like, so like, I feel good about humanity because we can tease each other still. But when you put these people in these crazy situations basically for the sole purpose to make money, if you like zoom out, it's to make money. It's not to help anybody really, unless you have those moments in these shows where like humanity actually comes through. But that's probably not what you take away from the show. Ultimately, you remember who won the contest, the competition stuff.
Yeah, the most
on
ridiculous.
TikTok,
Yeah.
there's an Instagram guy. He does what's called nice cat calling.
Nice.
He's out on a corner with a megaphone. He's saying, "Hey girl, you look like you get up on the first ring of your alarm clock." They're really clever, and he's got these people just smiling and laughing because he says, "We're out here being nice."
Yeah, and that's unexpected. Like I think
Yeah.
people laugh when they're surprised, but there's like two kinds. And but at some level, like on the dark side of all these shows, I think it's somewhat of an erosion of trust, because if you're put in a situation where you don't going to choose trust again, like if you get tricked and tricked and tricked, you're going to have your guard up. And I think, I don't know, you guys, I really had a tough time with this.
Well, so let's we're getting towards the end, but let's sort of circle back to this. Is there an ethical line being crossed, or at least being flirted with, to put people, if people choose to go into these situations and they just want the attention, they don't care, good, bad, indifferent, but the level of deception, and I mentioned in the question that we do this in psychology experiments. We deceive people in order to learn about human nature. And there you have ethical questions. If anybody remembers the Milgram experiment, where they got people they thought they were administering electric shocks to people, and they were actually coercing them into doing it. And people needed therapy when they got done with that. They were actually horrified at what they thought they had done. Here again there's no benefit to mankind, as you said, Annette. It's just sheer entertainment for the point of making money.
And I think to go back toward the beginning of the conversation and the way in which undertakings or something like this have evolved. Annette, you made the point that reality TV anymore isn't actually reality. And I think it's at least fair to suggest that today, if we're watching that stuff, to some extent, we're the ones who are being deceived. As opposed to going back to Jonassen's example of Alan Funt and Candid Camera, Alan Funt actually seemed to be a genuinely nice guy. And on many instances, he would talk to the people whom he had just deceived, and they would laugh and be okay with that. I think we're beyond that. I mean, Candid Camera was relatively benign, I think. I don't think we're there anymore. I don't think there's anything benign at all about what's going on under the heading of so-called reality TV.
That makes me sad.
Yeah, it is sad, actually.
All right, I'll be the optimist then, because I think the reality TV show wave crested, and we have had the prestige TV wave since then, the era of Breaking Bad, Mad Men, Sopranos, on and on. So I think that was a unwelcome trend. I don't like it any more than anyone else in the group does. And to answer Jonason's question, I think that was unethical of that TV show to put people in that position without really transparent consent. So that for me, that did cross a line. But while the appetite for that will probably never go away, and it's okay sometimes to have dumb humor. I don't want to act like there isn't enough clever, insightful humor for the amount of laughter people want. So until we grow like 1,000 more Dave Chappelle's, we're just not going to have that. So it's okay to fill that gap with some stupidity, but it should not come at the expense of people who did not know on some level what they were getting into. So for me, that particular show did cross a line, even if I'm not as worried about the state of society as a result, because I think that wave of reality spectacle has crested.
John, if you would, can you tell me how you, and if you intended to do this, how you relate programs like Breaking Bad and The Sopranos to reality TV? Is that what you were intending?
I think they replaced reality TV as the most dominant form of TV entertainment, maybe of entertainment, period. And then they made too much TV and they spent too much money on it. And now they're trying to figure out what to do in the absence of the great shows, right? Game of Thrones kind of being the last, possibly where that wave crested, and we'll see what comes next. But yes, I'm saying that those scripted dramas or comedies that, to go back to the humor point, but they weren't at real people's expense. They replaced reality TV, thankfully, in my view.
Interesting. I never saw, and I don't remember what the third program you cited was, but I never saw Breaking Bad and I never saw The Sopranos. So maybe I should, and I'll appreciate your distinction better.
Let me know if you watch them. I have varying opinions on those shows. Don't get me wrong, but I think they're all not mocking people in possibly unethical ways. I can at least say that for them.
But they're creating a world. They're creating a world that you step out of reality and you go into that world. You know what you're getting into. To me, that's like, I'm glad there's more of those shows than the reality shows, but there are still the reality shows like the Desperate Housewives, and I've heard people interviewed post. What's the one where they give a rose?
Bachelor or Bachelorette?
Yes, Bachelor, Bachelorette. I've heard people after they go through the show saying, I didn't love this person. I just said what the producers told me to say. So, I mean, at least some people are being somewhat honest about what really happens on the shows at some level. So, not all is lost.
And that's what I meant when I said now there are instances in which we're being deceived.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, this is a bit morbid, but I've never seen those programs, but I've read that some former participants in those shows have taken their lives. I mean, there's a very huge line being crossed somewhere.
Well, it kind of makes it out like and I say I've never seen any of these shows either, but we, the audience, collectively, are kind of like the space cadets.
Mm-hmm.
We are choosing to act as if what we're watching is real.
Like
when
wrestling.
There's very little evidence that it is.
Yeah.
And it's different from watching fiction with the willing suspension of disbelief. I'm investing in a story that I know is not real because I want to relate to the story and the plot development, the character transformations, as part of a mind improving experience.
Yeah, you might learn something.
Yeah, learn something about myself.
And if I'm watching a reality show, all I'm learning is how mean people are. I never watch them, but
yeah, I mean, I'm very disappointed. I also don't watch much TV, but my wife and I always watch Blue Bloods.
I love Blue Bloods.
Yeah, they announced it's canceled.
Well, no, it's not canceled. It's ending. They're
It's ending,
doing
okay.
the last, I don't know, 6 episodes.
Yeah, but apparently it's ending against much of the cast will.
True.
Which you talk to people. I mean, anytime I mention Blue Bloods, everybody goes, "Yeah."
So good.
Yeah,
They
it's
find
just
the middle
people-
ground. It's the only show where they find the middle ground. They
Yeah.
set up this end, they set up this end, and then at the end, Tom Selleck finds the middle ground. Awesome.
Yeah. And people say, what's your favorite part of the show? When everybody sits down together at Sunday dinner.
Sunday dinner.
Which is the opposite of reality TV.
And I think
And
I
reality.
think
That's true too.
But
I
it
think-
makes us feel good about our own humanity.
It's a
And
good
tradition.
model.
Things ought to
It's
be.
a good, yeah, it could be that way if we all were
It could
calm
be,
and
right?
had a lot of money, but we don't.
We all were friends with Tom Selleck and he invited us over for dinner.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, he said he may have to sell his avocado farm if he if he doesn't have the income from the show. So
Tragic.
it's yeah.
Hmm.
All right. Any final thoughts? Or have we exhausted the topic?
I again, I'll just say that, that British show from 19 years ago was innocuous by today's standards, and we're not improving very much. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I do want to mention, I should have mentioned at the outset that this topic comes from our friend Melissa Hughes.
Woo.
Wrote it up in one of her articles.
Thank you, Melissa.
Didn't get Melissa to be on for this one, but
That would have been fun.
she certainly sparked the idea. So grateful for that, and grateful for you, my guests.
Thank you.
John McGlothlin, Mark O'Brien, Annette Taylor, thank you for your time, your insights, your thoughts. And for those of you who are watching or listening, if you have a topic you'd like us to take up, please go to my website, ethicsninja.com, use the contact information, submit your idea if it's compelling. We will take it up in a future episode. And as always, we encourage you to continue grappling with the gray.